got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. And I'm excited for today's guest. I'm going to introduce in a second. I was joking around. She is a superhero, a real life superhero, Ladi Goldwire. But before I introduce her, you should check out other episodes of the podcast. You know, this is part of the Top Black Business Leader series, and Ladi is a perfect example of this. Past guests include Chris Gandy, who was a professional athlete, and now he helps people, you know, live rich and die wealthy, or pass on that legacy of wealth. And then, you know, near and dear to your heart, Ladi, is Wanda James, who's founder of Simply Pure, who actually was, I think, the first African-American dispensary owner in the country, I think. Maybe in Denver.
No, she's dead. I think she's in Colorado.
Her? Yeah, Colorado.
Colorado,
Okay.
seen her in passing. Yeah. She's an industry icon.
Yes, totally. So listen to that. She talks about the industry and what she had to do, and it's really interesting. And there's so many more. So check out other episodes of Inspired Insider. And before I give Ladi her official introduction, you know, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, I started with my business partner, John Corcoran. And, you know, for me, Ladi, the most important thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at a way to give to my best relationships, profile them, people I admire. And I've seen no better way over the past 10 years besides podcasting. And so we actually help a business with Rise 25 launch and run their own podcast. So you could show up and talk. We do everything else, but we make sure it has a foundation and strategy so it makes sense for your business. So if you have questions about it, go to rise25.com. You could email us. You know, both of us have been doing it for over 10 years. And as if you're listening to this right now, maybe if you're listening in 5 years, it's 15 years, but whatever. So check it out and let us know what you think if you have questions. Without further ado, I am very excited to introduce today's guest, Ladi Goldwire. And if you could email me, just agree with me that this sounds like a superhero's name, that's fine. But she is CEO and owner of BrinMar Construction Development Group. And she does so much more than that. But she is passionate about her business because it provides a means for women to be expressive and relevant in the space it's a male dominated, let's be honest, right? And there's a lot of industries out there that are male dominated. We need a female's touch in these things to improve things, make things better. My wife tells me that every single day. And so I know you are a big advocate for mental health. You're a big advocate for the hemp industry. But I just want to thank you for coming on, Ladi.
Well, I want to say thank you for having me, Jeremy.
You know, I wanted to start off with the mental health piece. You know, that's near and dear to your heart. We were talking before we hit record about NAMI and the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and you're on the board there. Why you have a personal story behind why you are so involved in this?
Very, very personal. So my son, my middle son, while growing up, I always paid some attention to what was going on, but probably like most parents, just so caught up in the hustle and bustle of just getting them raised that I missed a few things, I think. And as he was being recruited, getting ready to go off to college, he had gotten several Division I scholarship offers. We were so excited.
What did he play?
He played football. He played football, yes.
Was he looking? Were the Gators looking at him?
Well, he had a couple of uncles who play for the Gators. I think he has a cousin now that's playing for the Gators currently. They were a football family, and so his path almost seemed set. And sent him off to college, and almost immediately there were some things that just didn't line up. And as a result, I got a call one day that he had been missing, and in finding him, he had landed himself in the Scottsdale or Arizona jail. And I'm like, what is going on? Get out to Arizona and find out that he had some psychotic break. I brought him home immediately and had him examined and evaluated, and we determined that he, in fact, suffers from schizoaffective disorder. So it's a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and it's kind of a blend. It can manifest differently. And we've kind of been working through that the last 7 or 8 years. And so, you know, by nature, I'm kind of a watchdog, got kind of an advocate element to my spirit. I guess you call it superhero, like, I don't know, but when it's your kid, I think every mom kind of has that. And dove into where we could get resources and what that looked like. And as a result, I landed on this wonderful agency organization dedicated to, just offering support to family members suffering from and trying to learn how to deal with and provide care for their loved ones with diagnoses. And so NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, had affiliate offices all throughout the country. I found the nearest one and got involved. I currently teach each year, family to family classes that kind of do that same thing in a more intimate setting, teaching loved ones how to care for their loved ones, I should say, family members, how to care for their loved ones diagnosed with a mental illness. And I've been doing that since, got right in and absolutely adore it. So it's personal because it's personal, but it's not so personal because the statistics say 1 in 5, 1 in 4 individuals are suffering from some degree of mental illness at some point or stage in their life at any given time. And so it's just happening all around us. So being able to be a part of an agency that's doing such a good job of raising awareness and offering resources and outreach is kind of my form of therapy. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that.
What, looking back, if someone's listening to this and maybe a friend, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a child, who knows who it is, what are some red flags people should be on the lookout for that may be easy to miss?
For my kid, I think when I think about it now, it was so non-celebratory about things that should have been huge to him. Signing to a D1, a collegiate program, thought he'd be super happy or exuberant about it. And it just was, watching him have a touchdown and everybody celebrating and him kind of out to the side, looking for, the signs, I would say, just being or wanting to be isolated without really being able to put your finger on why. For me, it was my son really didn't have any light behind his eyes. I don't really know how to explain that, but I think parents really know when kids start to kind of lose their light. And that was something that jumped out at me right away. The other thing that I would say is just not being tapped into the emotion of being sad, happy. There was never anything in those spaces. And that was something that I didn't take notice of immediately, but going back and kind of replaying it all in my head, I definitely think that was a sign. So I tell any parent at the end of the day, the only thing many of us can do is the absolute best we can do, and not to put a whole lot of pressure on yourselves about what you miss, but pay attention to what you can and don't be afraid to ask questions and.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you say that, it's like, I could explain that away in 2 seconds. Like just someone who's focused and he's not worried about that touchdown. He's worried about the next touch. I mean, you could totally explain away some of those things. I don't know.
It's different though, because while that was, you could explain it away, but then it will go over into that space where I tell you about the light. I could never understand why there didn't seem to be any happiness. You know what I mean? It was like, in high school, something was
different.
Something was very different. It just wasn't any life to what was going on around him. And I'm talking to so many parents. That's the thing that stands out to most of them, especially for the children that are kind of in that adolescent stage. They're just not tuned in and tapped into their surroundings and what's happening in terms of, big life events. They're getting really quiet. You should probably inquire as to what might be going on with them internally.
So anyone you can check out NAMI, the organization,
Yes,
and
yes.
for more
NAMI.org.
resources and help. And, you know, we were talking before we hit record, Lady, about you taking beatings. Okay. This is not necessarily physical beatings that I'm talking
No.
about, but, you know, I was saying when you do a search, there's something that says prosecutors drop charges, and there's always a story behind these things. So, talk about what you were referring to when we were talking.
Well, in addition to being a contractor, I am also a certified building official for the state of Florida and certified with the International Code Council to, officiate, make sure that when engaged in that capacity, that I'm doing everything I can to keep residents, business owners, all of the community stakeholders safe as they more or less occupy buildings and structures we're doing or responsible for overseeing all of the people who, do the inspections and all of the engineering and architectural reviews that have to happen in order for you to get permits and whatnot. And what I found myself engaged in was I took a job with a city that I was born and raised in, but the city was finding itself in a space where they were doing a lot of development, high rise, intercoastal development or development on the intercoastal. And, with any huge development project, there's typically permit fees that have to be collected. There's variances that have to be granted. There's permissions that have to be obtained. And when you're the person responsible for rendering those decisions, especially if those decisions start to cut into timelines and things like that, it can get challenging. I found myself in the midst of a tsunami, and it resulted in me having to file federal litigation to preserve my rights, not only as an individual, but as a female career holding person trying to just maneuver my way through day-to-day activities and job assignments. And so we had some equal pay for equal work litigation pending. We had, some retaliation litigation pending. It was just a huge thing. It's now resulted in this 3-year-long federal battle in the federal courts, which up to this point we've prevailed. But as a result of that, to kind of diminish the character and all of the things that you see when you're really in a space or you find yourself in a space to kind of be bullied by big dogs. I was arrested, I was jailed, I was under indictment for 21 months. They alleged that I pretended to be a building official, which is completely impossible. And the day of trial for this particular case that was filed in retaliation for what I had filed, those charges were then ultimately dropped. And so it got crazy. It was a rough 21 months, but to have them dismiss the charges, to have the state licensing agency support me and basically find, a no probable cause finding for the charges that were being alleged was redeeming. But it also added some merit to what we do and how we do. Building officials, people don't like building officials because they think that they get in the way of progress. But when you look at buildings collapsing, you've seen it in Las Vegas, you've seen it, we've had it here in South Florida where people drive under a bridge and the bridge collapses. Well, what happens is the first people that they come get out of the bed at night are the building officials who approved it, the engineers who okayed it, and you are responsible for the well-being of all of these people you know, you don't know. And so you learn to develop thick skin and you learn to remain committed to your obligation and your oaths to preserve life safety. And sometimes you might go to jail for it, but you want to go to jail for being on the right side of right. You don't want to go to jail because you were willing to turn a blind eye and pass the buck. And so that's pretty much how my situation shaped up. But it has been nothing but that has worked out in such a way that it's kind of made me the go-to person for here in South Florida for developers who want to get it right, and not run up against getting in front of a building official who may not want to pass the projects. I find that a lot of my business in that capacity, consulting, is showing them what building officials expect so that they can move their projects along.
So certain powerful people may want to push things through faster because they have a certain agenda, and when something stands in the way, they will maybe not let it stand in the way. And it's actually funny, lady. Earlier today, I had an interview. I had Christina Nicholson on, who's a media maven, and we talked about this, which is the topic of fake news and the fact that bullying online, like, we are all news sources now with social media. And if you perpetuate fake news, it's just as bad. So someone could post anything they want about you online, and someone else could like it and share it. And then they treat it as fact without digging deeper into what is truly the fact.
And once it's gone and it's out there, it's out there. There's nothing you could do. And I found myself being plummeted by I was in the paper every other day. I was on the news, and you just get, when you do the searches, like you mentioned earlier, it just starts piling up, and you have no way to redeem yourself.
Right now we do. That's why I'm asking about it.
Now you do. And it's a great thing, because guess what? A lot of people don't know that this outlet or outlets like yours is there, and how to finesse it in such a way that they can use it to their advantage. I spent a lot of time. They kept drilling into me, lady, you're the official. You have to go high when they go low. I'm like, but I'm going to jail. Like, there's not a go high or go low. Like, I'm going to jail. I need to be able to speak up for myself. And because certain mediums, you don't know how they're going to shape up, people will just shy away from, utilizing the types of resources and opportunities that you provide. And I would encourage anybody whose back is up against the wall, find a media ally, research, and, just get pinned down whether or not they've been fair in all of their presentations. And if you can demonstrate that they have been, formulate an alliance and just continue to build yourself up, because it's hard. It's easy to get into trouble, but it's very hard to work your way out of some of the stuff that people put out there about you. And having an ally is super important.
Yeah. Let's talk about BrinMar Construction, right?
Sure.
So everyone can check it out, BrinMarConstruction.com. And, I love the tagline, helping you to build your dream, not even your dream home. It's just your dream. And there's some beautiful pictures on there. I figured I want to hear about how you got into the construction development. But before we do, talk about, there's one project that is kind of near and dear to your heart because of housing opportunities in where you were born.
Yeah.
What did you do there?
I am born in the beautiful city of Riviera Beach, Florida. It's nestled between West Palm Beach or Fort Lauderdale and Port St. Lucie. But I mean, it is paradise, home to the #1 dive spot in the world. The scenery is just phenomenal. I got into construction because my father was a block mason. He didn't have any boys. I was out there just watching him do what he did and wanted to be a part of it. When I think about the project that means the most to me, it was going through those same neighborhoods where I was raised and watching the fact that we could not tip the property values in our favor to be able to, take advantage of refinancing opportunities that would allow us to build up and build out the properties. The things that you see in other neighborhoods, for whatever reason, Riviera Beach was lacking. They didn't have the homegrown talent to be able to offer a solution. And so when I saw that there was a chance for me to kind of capture infill lots and fill these spaces with affordable housing and create it in such a way or build it out and offer financing that would accommodate kind of the type of buyer that Riviera Beach had in those areas, I took advantage of it. And I built some really, really cool houses in that city. What it did was it enticed individuals to come into the city and purchase and make Riviera Beach their home. But when we made those sales, it triggered the comps in the area so that people were then able to reevaluate what their homes were really worth. The property appraisers would come back in and give us a fair shake at what was going on around what I had built that was now new. And it just changed the trajectory of my community. And so of all the projects that I've been engaged on, that's the one that means the most to me. And that's why it really changed the fabric of our community.
What was it like when you grew up compared to now?
When I grew up in that city, and everybody on the street knew everybody. You could leave the doors open. My father, we had a few single moms on the street, few older people. He cut his grass. He cut everybody's grass. And we were responsible for raking and picking up behind it. And we thought it was the worst thing in the world growing up, but it taught us how important it is to have your neighbors back, right? Nobody's neighborly. There's so many people now that live right next door to their neighbors and they can't tell you their names. They can't tell you anything about them. And I think, you can't have community without first being good neighbors. And so what was different when I was growing up is that I grew up in a community that was neighborly. And what I'm seeing now is everybody is super tied to electronics, technology, not going outside and playing and watering the grass and sharing what's been going on from household to household. That doesn't happen anymore. And it's very different. I'm hoping that, with COVID and everything that's happening that should be really, really terrible for us all, that it puts us in a space where we kind of get back to basics. I feel like that's kind of what's in the air now. And I'm looking forward to where that takes us.
What made you start your own business, lady?
Having a really quirky personality, not getting along in terms with rules, processes, protocols that just didn't make sense. I wanted to create something for myself, for my family, for my children that was reminiscent of what I thought we represented, which was, we're a bunch of free-spirited individuals. We want to, work to live, but we don't want to live to work. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? And I felt like not having my own business put me in a situation where, all of the hours and the time spent was being spent building a dream and a legacy for somebody else. And I really wanted to try to find myself or create a space where I could build something for me and for my family and, my children, their children, and see where that took us. And so I'd been passionate about being an entrepreneur for a very, very long time. But the moment that I realized in terms of personality that I didn't necessarily have the wiring to not ask why, to kind of quell being a visionary and all the things that go along with entrepreneurship, I figured, let me try it. And I don't regret it at all. I don't regret it.
Lady, I want to know one thing I see with you is you seem to be very good at managing stress from the outwardly. So I'm wondering how you manage stress, because as again, before we hit record, typically you're in a studio. If someone's watching the video, they see you're in a car because you had to go out and there was some, and I don't know if I could do what you do with construction development, because there's probably always something you have to deal with. And there was something you had to go out for because you had to check it out and it was urgent. So
a big something. So we were talking before we got on the call, and I do apologize for being in the car, but we're in the process of demolishing a drive-through. And there were some concerns that we may have come in contact with a gas line. And if you're in construction, that's like a mayday. You call everybody under the sun from all the utilities, and the qualifier, the person responsible for the work, needs to be on the site when they show up, so that if there has been some damage done, if there are going to be some fines distributed, it starts at the top, right? So, I manage stress. I won't say that I manage stress well. It's just that I recognize that, you've got to get done what you've got to get done. I've had some really good wise counsel. I talk through a lot of my challenges with colleagues, people who are similarly situated. One has been very hell bent on reminding me to always have the tough conversations first, because that typically eliminates a lot of stress for a lot of people. Most of the situations we have that we're stressed out about, we're stressed out because we're rooted in, the stress is rooted in some type of unknown, right? Something you forgot to ask, something you meant to say, conditions that may have not have been discussed and clearly understood by all parties. She would always say, lady, have the hard conversations first. And I've found that has eliminated a lot of the stress, or at least managed what the stress looks like, or what I anticipate it will look like when I've got to deal with really hard situations. In addition to that, it just boils down to, what's happening to you, Jeremy, is usually 9 times out of 10 happening for you. And when you look at the year that we have had, that we just transitioned out of 2020, you start putting things into perspective. What really is there to stress about? I mean, there are so many things that went way left last year. I think every day that I wake up and I'm here to try to kind of do this thing again, I'm grateful for it. And so I'm not looking for the stress. And if it is stressful, in my mind, I'm telling myself over and over again, okay, lady, if this is happening to you, there's something going on, and it's also happening for you. Looking for that makes, my perspective a little bit different when it comes to being completely and totally stressed out.
Yeah, you come from a different perspective, and it when you frame it against other things that are happening in the world or your life or other people's lives, then it maybe puts it in a different light that it may not be as stressful as we make it out to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. First of all, lady, I have one last question for you, but I just want to thank you. Everyone should check out BrinMarConstruction.com. Check out what they do. Check out, their about page. Are there any other places online, lady, that we should point people towards?
Well, I can't say that it's online just yet, but there is a new development in my life. I will be launching in April some teas, CBD-based teas, hemp-based teas, that I am very, very happy about. It'll be High Teas by Lady. And
is that the website? What's the URL?
The URL will be, or it's the site isn't up yet, but it will be High Teas by Lady.
Okay. So it's High TEAS by BY. Lady is spelled LADI.com. High Teas. I can't believe no one else has thought of that. That's pretty cool.
Well, listen, here's the thing, tea has always been the thing. They have a lot of people out there that are doing teas. Eventually, Florida is one of those states that is dragging its feet with regard to the legalization of marijuana. Now, when that happens, the teas will obviously evolve, but right now they'll just be CBD based. But eventually, as soon as we can figure out all of the formulations, we will be really, really tweaking the tea game. And I'm excited about it. It'll be the fun space that I get to play in outside of all of the really rigid stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis. So
what made you decide on the tea as opposed to any other delivery system, we'll call it?
So let me say tea. First of all, there's this kind of taboo with, just firing up a joint. I mean, if I'm like, it's like, what are you doing? Especially if you're a professional or you're trying to really make your way in the world. Nobody wants you there. And a lot of women just don't like the smell in their hair and their clothes and but when you think about teas and you think about how, the English partakes in them, there's a classy, very sophisticated element to it, right? And so I figured there's a way to do everything. And I thought adding some class and some color to how you do it. The flavors that we've chosen are extraordinary. They're out of this world. I can't wait to introduce them. But, you know, I just thought that it was a better way to deliver the product. In addition to the fact that most of my friends know if there's ever any good gossip or any good, I'm always like, oh, I got the tea for you, girl. I got the tea. You got to let me get you on the phone. And so it was a combination of me just being real wild and crazy, but also wanting to put something together that lets us do what we want to do in a manner so that we don't lose, respect for each other with regard to just maintaining our professionalisms and all of that good stuff, because that's what everybody's afraid of right now. It's like, you legalize cannabis in Florida. That's the conversation. And we're just going to have a bunch of buck wild, folks not able to get to work on time and do what they're supposed to do. And that's totally not the case, from a medicinal standpoint and all the other things. And so this high teas is going to be what we look forward to it being. And I'm excited about it.
All right. So be on the lookout. HighTeasByLady.com. Check it out. Last question, Lady, is mentors. You said you seek counsel and you have colleagues and people that you turn to. Who are some of your mentors? And it could be actual mentor, like colleagues, or it could be just some of your favorite books that have mentored you as well. Who do you consider either in-person mentors or distant mentors?
So the infamous negotiator for the FBI, I believe.
Chris Voss.
Chris Voss.
Yeah, I have an interview with Chris Voss. Yeah.
Oh, do you? Oh my God. Okay, so like my eyes are like, I will be tuned in. That is exciting. Like in my mind, he's probably my best friend. Every time I get an email from his like automated system, I feel like he's just having a conversation or alerting me to a conversation just for me. So he's one.
His book, Never Split the Difference. If anyone has heard of it, it's one of my favorites. And actually, Lady, when he came to Chicago, we went to dinner and I was having I already had committed to another dinner. So I asked this group, can I bring a friend? And they didn't necessarily know who I was bringing, but I was bringing Chris because he happened to be coming through Chicago, and he sat next to someone, and the person was a very successful entrepreneur, but he was a fanboy of Chris, and he said, I've bought over 200 copies of your book. I've given them to all my friends, and it is a must read or listen to, whether it's Audible.
It is. So. If you can't read it, listen to it via Audible, equally as exciting. So he's definitely one. Melody Dobson is another one. And in my in-person life, my mentor is definitely a political activist here locally, Lynn Hubbard. She has been a freedom fighter for social and racial equity issues. And that is also something very near and dear to my heart. And just watching her relentless pursuit of equity has been it's been something to kind of be on the front lines and see with her. And so she would be one for sure.
So talk about, so people don't know Lynn's work. What would be an example of something that what has she done that you really admire when you say freedom fighter? What would be an example?
Fighter. So, she's notorious for being very, very outspoken. If I had to align her with any of the old school civil rights activists, the person that comes to mind is Fannie Lou Hamer. Very much like today is actually her birthday. That's so crazy that we're having this conversation. But the things she's always advocated for, equal rights in terms of what young children of color are exposed to educationally. What they're exposed to socially in terms of just the different opportunities. She was always big on ensuring that children in our community, horseback riding, lacrosse, things that were not necessarily something that we could get our hands on right away, but just the exposure element. She was really, really on the front lines of that happening. Housing, clean water is a big thing in Riviera Beach. It's a wonder we aren't as infamous as Flint, Michigan, but it's a real issue. And she's always been an advocate for having those types of things brought to the forefront of everybody's mind, and just advocating to just get the basic things that we all need and we all should have on a day-to-day basis. And so she's just had herself engaged in some pretty huge fights. She was critical in the voter restoration process for returning citizens. And it was she was in that space before it was a thing, when Charlie Crist was our governor and Jeb Bush before him. And so I've been able to watch her, and she's been instrumental in shaping me as, an evolving woman. I had children very young, Jeremy. And statistically, I should not have had the opportunity to kind of land on my feet. And it was watching her and having her kind of hold my hand and remind me of the things that were important and what I should always believe in and who I should always be advocating for, that shaped my life. And so she's definitely the it girl for me.
Amazing. Ladi Goldwire, thank you for joining me. Everyone can check out BrinMarConstruction.com. You can go to at some point highteasbylady.com.
Yes.
And just really appreciate you. Check out other episodes, and thanks everyone.
Thank you, Jeremy. You be well.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.